Many universities have become more like luxury goods. In the same way that you get prestige by carrying a Hermes bag, you get prestige by being associated with a university. Parents, I think, they fear that their students are not going to be successful. It's unwise to think about a university as simply preparing students for jobs, because the truth is that none of us actually know what the job market will look like 20 years from now. I'm Mike Magee, the president of Minerva University. You're asking about our reputation as being both an innovative university and a highly selective university. And both of those things are true. We are highly selective, and we have been more selective than Harvard in many of the years of our existence. Some of that is a function of the fact that we are still quite small. So every year we only have between 150 and 200 seats available for our incoming first-year class. But my goal is to actually provide more access to talented young people from all over the world to attend Minerva University, because I think it can benefit individual students and benefit the world. So I would rather be known for our innovations than our selectivity. And I think we are known for primarily 3 innovations that are fully integrated at Minerva University. One is the active learning pedagogy that we developed. All of our faculty are trained to teach small dialogue-based seminars, and we teach them on a technology platform that is designed to enable that active learning pedagogy. Our students can take classes from anywhere in the world, but they take them live together. Secondly, our innovations in project-based learning. When you learn in a Minerva classroom, you immediately take all of the knowledge and skills that you've built in class and apply them to complex projects in areas that you're interested in. And lastly, our approach to experiential learning in culturally immersive environments. That's the reason that we want our students to live in economically and culturally vibrant cities all over the world, so that they can immerse themselves in those cultures, connect themselves to that economy as a form of experiential learning. I think a good education is an education that helps you to build the skills that you will get to use for the rest of your life. And some of those skills will be intellectual, some of them will be emotional and social, but it should be the launching point for everything you do afterwards. Well, when I think about the role of universities in our lives, I think that they should have a real value to us as individuals in preparing us for the rest of our lives and for the careers that we are interested in. I think both of those things are quite important, and it is not purely practical. I don't think universities' only role is job training, for instance. I actually think it's unwise to think about a university as simply preparing students for jobs, because the truth is that none of us actually know what the job market will look like 20 years from now. I would never try to predict which jobs will be the best jobs or the most available jobs when my children are older. But I think what we can do is build the kind of skills in young people that will allow them to adapt to job markets for the rest of their lives and find careers that they are interested in and passionate about and good at. That's what we try to do. So I think an essential role for universities is skill building. So you're asking about the fear that parents have about taking risks with their students' choices of higher education. And that is something that I have felt personally. My daughters are 23, 20, and 17 years old. So I've gone through this college process now 3 times. I think students and parents have different fears. In my experience, young people are afraid of going somewhere where they won't feel like they belong. and they have a strong desire to be part of a community where they feel safe and connected and supported. So we try to make sure when we talk to young people that they know that at Minerva University they're going to be safe, they're going to feel a deep sense of belonging in our community, and they'll be supported by our faculty and staff, in addition to finding an academic environment that they're passionate about and building the skills that will allow them to have good careers and wonderful lives. Parents, I think, often have a different fear. They fear that their students are not going to be successful, and they feel that very deeply. And often a prestigious and old institution of higher education feels like a much safer choice to them. So when I talk to parents, I try to talk to them about exactly what we are going to do to put their students, their children, on a path to success at Minerva University. And I try to talk specifically about our actual program and say, imagine that your student is going to become very, very passionate about a particular field of academic study that has real connections to promising careers, and that they are going to feel well supported in that area and motivated to learn not just knowledge, but skills that will be relevant to their careers. And then they are going to be able to practice those skills in some of the most economically and culturally vibrant cities in the world. So that if I'm interested in a career in sustainable energy, for instance, I am going to graduate from Minerva University saying that I've already been working in that field. I've had internships at companies in Seoul and Tokyo and Buenos Aires and Berlin related to that field. And I have worked on complex problems and projects with other talented young people from nations like Saudi Arabia and Brazil and Denmark. So I have a set of skills as a young person in my field of interest that almost no undergraduates in the world have. I think in the future it's going to be very important for young people to be able to not just develop those skills, but differentiate themselves from other talented people in a global workforce. And that these types of skills of being able to collaborate with people different from yourself, being able to think critically, being able to solve complex problems are going to be the most important career skills of the future. So you're asking about ranking systems and are they a problem? I think there's two problems with ranking systems. One is they tell you very, very little as a young person about a university. Harvard or Princeton or Minerva University or a highly ranked university doesn't really tell you anything about the experience that you will have at those universities. And I think that good information systems should actually provide you with the information you need to make good choices as a consumer of higher education. And I don't think ranking systems do that very well. I think what ranking systems tell you is how much prestige that you will get through association with a particular institution. And in that way, I think many universities have become more like luxury goods. In the same way that you get prestige by carrying a Hermes bag, you get prestige by being associated with the university. And I feel that as someone who has a PhD from an Ivy League university. People assume things about me that might not be true, and sometimes I benefit from that. But it doesn't tell anyone any accurate information about me necessarily. And I think the same is true when students are trying to choose what university to go to. Ranking systems don't tell them very much. So I always encourage young people to spend much more time researching the programs that are available at a university, the pedagogy that they use to teach you, talking to people who have graduated from that university, doing your own homework to decide if a university and its programs are a good fit for you. There's two stories that come to mind for me that have had a very profound impact on my own education and my own life. My first important memory of going to school was going to school in public schools in the American South when those schools were first being racially integrated. So when I began school, that was the first time that black and white students from the US were allowed to go to school together. And those were the schools that I experienced. So I went to school during this time of grand experiment in US public education. And my fellow classmates were students like myself and also African American classmates from the South at a time when racism was an enormous problem in the United States. And those became my friends. And it had a very big effect on me throughout my whole life. But I was also the child of a physician who was working in that same environment in the American South where there was a great deal of racism. And one day I can remember being at dinner with my parents, and I was about 7 years old. And my father told my mother a story about his work the evening before. African-American man had come into the emergency room and he had been in a terrible boating accident and needed surgery. And my father called the main surgeon who was at home to tell him that he had to come in and perform surgery. And that surgeon said, "Is he black or is he white?" about the patient who had come into the emergency room. And my father said, "He's black." And the surgeon hung up the phone and did not come in to perform the surgery. But the next day when I went back to school, I was quite confused. And I thought, was that the father of one of my classmates who had had this happen? And I had to think about the connection of school to social justice and basic human kindness. And that experience never left me. I always wanted schools to be a place where everyone, regardless of their background, would feel like they belong, would be treated with kindness and respect. And I think all of us have these profound experiences as young children in school that shape the rest of our lives, that shape the path of our curiosity, the values that we have. And I always encourage people to think about what was school like for them when they were a very young child. The second story I'll tell briefly is when I was a high school student. I was very interested in social change and politics. And I joined Model UN to learn about nations all over the world. And that was a very wonderful education experience for me. And through Model UN in 1987, I had the opportunity to spend 2 weeks in the Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, when the Cold War was still very much alive, and where young people like myself from the US had very little information about what life in the Soviet Union was about. I got to spend time there and see the culture in Moscow and in St. Petersburg with my own eyes. And it had a huge impact on me as a thinker. It had a very big impact on the things that I was curious about. It left me with a sense of humility that actually the information I was getting about the Soviet Union within the United States was not necessarily very accurate, and I should try to learn experientially for myself. And it certainly shaped the path of my academic interests going forward. Well, I think originality often, almost always, emerges from encounters with difference. Because when we encounter difference, it challenges our thinking. It makes us have to innovate in the way that we think in order to solve problems that we've never encountered before. It shifts our perspective, so it makes us much more nimble thinkers. And one of the main forms of difference that we encounter in the world is human diversity itself. When we spend time with people who are different from ourselves, I think it makes us better thinkers and more original thinkers and more creative thinkers. And I don't think, for instance, that it's a coincidence that the largest and most successful companies over the last generation in the United States were almost all founded by either immigrants to the United States or the children of immigrants. Almost all of them. I don't think that that's an accident. Every one of those people were once young people in environments that were unfamiliar to them. And I think it made them more creative and innovative and more original thinkers. So part of the reason that we are so committed to diversity at Minerva University is because we think it has a powerful effect on the minds of young people that's very beneficial to them. But it's also, I think, essential to the world we live in today. As I look at so many of the violent conflicts around the world today, I see their origins as being in suspicion and mistrust between people, and a sense that they are so different from each other that they can only exist in conflict. And we try to create a different impression among people from very different backgrounds, that they actually have much in common, and that they can live in community together in not just a peaceful way, but a very productive way. So for those two reasons, the impact that it can have on innovation and originality, but also the impact that it can have on peace and community, we think diversity is very important, and it's certainly been important in my life. This day and age, leading a global university with a team that interacts virtually all over the world, the first thing that I think about is chairs mean that I sit probably too much of my time. More symbolically, I think of role that I play at a university. I feel an immense sense of responsibility being in my chair as president of Minerva University. And for me, what that means is staying true to the values of our university, being very committed to a world that is more safe and sustainable and equitable for all of us, and trying to exemplify that in my own behavior. I also think it means that my role often as president of Minerva University is to listen to other stakeholders in our community, to our faculty, to our staff that work in residential life all over the world with our students, and especially to our students themselves. Ultimately, we are here to serve them, and they have so many good ideas about how we can improve what we do. So I associate sitting with listening, and I think that's an important part of my job.